And in no particular order, I'm just going to say, Steve from Cotswold Range, would you like to start us?
Of course, I knew I'd go first. I knew I'd have to.
Sorry, you're just in my sight line on the screen.
Okay. Right, so where we started, we kind of went through the green tourism project. So we had a massive checklist on how to become more sustainable, and then it was just a general business overview and ticking things off from. I've actually got my laptop next to me, so I can read off some things. All of our equipment is sourced as local as possible. From Swindon being the nearest air rifle shop. We've got Wales Archery. I know that sounds really far away, but it's only 50 minutes, and that's our nearest archery shop. In terms of printing, we use a company in Cirencester, and that generally is where all of our stock comes from. In terms of waste management, it's hard to gather these figures, but we're expecting 95% of our business waste to be recycled. And that's the only real evidence is from our bin collections on weights and things like that. But yeah, it's always the recycled bin that gets the full one. We try to minimize as much as possible. One example recently are our targets that we do collect from that Cirencester company. They're always wrapped in bubble wrap, and bubble wrap is such a pain to get rid of. So now when we collect them, they just wrap them in paper for us. It's like one little thing which just always annoyed me, because that's in terms of packaging, something that we could never deal with properly. We're lucky enough to have a 2-acre venue. We've got quite a big aim on not just managing wildlife habitats, but trying to create some as well. We've just installed our second 100,000 litre pond. We're trying to focus on native, so native plants, native trees, native fish, everything native. And we just recently put in the new, well, I'm up to 20 fruit trees, and they are, if I just have a look, because I forgot the words. Native fruit trees. I forgot the word, but they're all date pre 1900 basically. So they're unique to the UK. We're trying to just build one big habitat circle. If everything's native on site, then everything thrives. So we've noticed things like the number of bees on site, everything like that, have dramatically increased. We're actually joined the Bumblebee Conservation Trust this year. Gloucestershire Wildlife Trust is our nominated charity. We've been working on those things with them in terms of advice for our wildflower meadows and just general site maintenance, how we can improve from there. There's other things. We don't have a need for electricity. We're pretty much an off-grid venue. Obviously, there are some needs in terms of the toilet lighting and things like that, so we do use solar. We water harvest from our roofs, so that provides water to the toilets. And then I think that's it. We try to cover most bases, but still always on the lookout for other directions to take.
Fantastic, thank you. That was a great overview. Will you talk about heritage trees?
Heritage, that's the word I
yeah.
can think of.
It took me a minute, and then it popped into
Yeah, I
my
was
head.
just like Googling frantically saying old English trees. Yeah, so heritage fruit trees. Yeah, so like Victoria plums, everything like that.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you ever so much. If someone wants to volunteer, they can. But Gemma, would you go next? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. I was doing a thumbs up to someone else. I thought, oh no, that looks like I'm saying, yeah, I'll go next.
I thought you were signaling me, you see.
I'll go next. So obviously being Forestry England, a lot of people sort of always look to us for influencing them. So that's kind of where we always try to start to influence our visitors to do well as well. And I think, like Steve was saying, there's lots of little things like getting rid of bubble wrap, like little tiny things like that you can do that actually amount to masses of things. So we do a similar thing to that. So we've looked at all the suppliers of our signage and things like that. And we do work with a lot of big events as well. So we've put it into some of our contracts that if you're bringing an event to us, your signage and your way you're doing things got to be sustainable as well. So we put all of that into those contracts, and we get there's a lovely company that does everything really sustainable to do with signage, that they can take it back and recycle it and things like that. And yeah, the way they deliver it, we have the packaging still here. So if we have to send something back, like our pricing boards, if we have to send those back, they don't go into new packaging. They just go back to the packaging that they came in and get sent off to get redone. So yeah, all those little things. We've done things like big projects, as in our sort of big solar panels that have just gone up on our tractor centre, which is creating, you know, enough energy to supply that area. So that's kind of like worked really well. But in terms of energy, we've also done little things like getting all of the staff to understand to turn a light off, like all those really little things that I have to get my teenagers to do at home, getting all of the staff to understand that as well, getting everybody to turn their computers off at night, turning the thermostats down in the offices, making sure that if offices are not used, there's no heating on in them when they're not, nobody's using them. All those little things include, and then with all the big things on top of it, like the big solar panels, the air source heat pumps, all of that sort of thing. So like I said, we put a lot of things into our procurement process, things like everyone has to be sustainable, using things like FSC wood, reducing use of things like palm oil. So ideally we would have no palm oil, but if we do, it's the ethically sourced ones. And we use our own timber in projects, because obviously we have our own timber. Which I know not everyone has nice trees to use. We've moved much further to things like with our learning projects. If we've got learning events happening, we'll reuse things. So we've moved to much sort of more, rather than like printing off a whole load of things, we're reusing lots of the materials that we would have used in learning things before. So all those events are nice and sustainable. Other little things like eco cleaning products, getting our suppliers, because we do have a lot of suppliers that bring things in. So we've got cleaning companies, we've got that sort of thing. We've put it into their contracts that their products will be eco cleaning products. So all of that goes into our contracts. We've just done a big thing on our waste. So we've introduced our nice new bins. So we've got a baseline of our recycling. We can now see the effects of those new bins on that. So we really had to look at our waste sources and what do we actually have on site? Is there any point in putting a cardboard bin there, or are people just going to put things like pizza boxes in it that are going to contaminate it? So we really had to really weigh up what bins to put there, so that really focusing more on not contaminating the waste streams that we've got, rather than trying to make lots of recycling. If it's going to get contaminated, there's no point in doing that. So a lot of people will just like put a bin out, and it's really more complicated than that. So we're just seeing the results of that now, moving to sort of cardboard only bins, which makes the cardboard be recycled a lot better because it's all grouped together and not getting contaminated with the other things. We've got all of our people on site who do the catering. They are really looking at reusable catering equipment, which is such a massive thing to try and do, you know, washing them all. When you've got a massive site with the amount of people that we have coming in, it's balancing up. Do you wash it or do you recycle it? Which one is better? You've got net zero versus reusing and recycling. It's a toss up. It's looking at all the data. Is that going to work? Which one's the best one to do? So we are looking at all of that at the moment, and they've already got things like 30 pence cheaper cup of coffee if you reuse your cup. We've got we're trialing cup bins at the moment to recycle them. It's more the message of getting the general public to actually engage with those that we're now having to work on, because a lot of them didn't do what we wanted them to do. So that's still an ongoing project that we've got at the moment. We've done like little things like removing the condiment sachets and just putting a big bottle of ketchup there. There's condiment sachets they're tiny little things, but there's thousands of them out there. So that is a bigger thing than it sounds like. And then working with lots of people nearby to do the green transport things. We offer a different price ticket for people who come by green transport. We've worked alongside lots of people to get that Robin bus up and running, so that it's getting people to these rural areas. I think there was only like 3 buses that came past us a day or something in the past. So getting a nice green transport option to us is really good. That's something we're still working on with lots of different people collaboratively. If all of the different places nearby can come together and try and get something working, so we're not just trying to do it on our own. If we say, well, if this bus goes to Slimbridge and to us and to somewhere else, then that's someone's going to go for that, rather than us just saying, can we have a bus, please? I think the other big things, we've got, like Steve was saying, rainwater harvesting in our propagation area. We've got the electric car that we use for staff. We've changed things like our tree planting tubes so that they're not the plastic ones. We've just changed that a little bit so that we're trialing different items that we can use to that. And obviously we're planting lots of trees at the moment. If anyone's interested in what trees are planting there's a nice Silkwood project website and newsletter you can sign up for, and you can find out what trees they're planting. There's thousands of them. So I think what we're moving to next is just more of the same, I guess. So looking at insulation in buildings, putting a few more heat pumps in, just getting a few more people on board with things like recycling their maps, so we don't have to print so many, or getting people to scan a QR code instead of getting a map. Just all those really little things that build up to something massive, really. I think that's it.
Thank you, Gemma. The cup recycling that you've got those sort of, I don't know what they call it, like boards, and then they've got the different columns, haven't they, where you put the lid in one, the cup in the other, put all your liquid that's left over and things.
They
be interesting to see how those go.
It didn't work quite as well as we hoped. It's getting rid of the liquid out of them, so that, because if we want to recycle the cups that we have, you can put into normal cardboard recycling, because they're not coated in anything, but you have to make sure that that's not going to then contaminate the rest of the cardboard that's in there. So you end up, if there's a tea bag in there, or marshmallows was the main issue. So, or like if there's a lot still left in that cup, it's just going to contaminate the rest of it. So you really have to get the general public to empty their cups into the liquid thing. And then there was a load of marshmallows in the tube for that, which I didn't account for when I was making it. So yeah, it was lovely, and it worked really, really well. They were putting their cups in, they were putting their lids in, but there was just a few different elements that that one person who just went, oh, I'll just shove it all in there, then kind of ruined the whole stream for everyone else, because you can't then put all of those cups in because they're contaminated. So I think we're going to have to work a bit more on the messaging for people of why are you doing this? What's if you put your tea bag in there, what's going to be the effect of that? So we're looking at maybe getting a different type of bin to see if a different type works a bit better, if it's less, because the general public need to have the easiest solution possible. So we've done things like put the general waste bin on the end, because the lazy people will just go and put it in the first bin they come to. If that's a recycling one, they'll put it in there, they won't care. So putting general waste at the end, that helps people. So the more simple that you can make it for people, the better. So I think having all of those tubes was great, and it worked quite well for the people who engaged in it, but for the people who didn't, or just put their can of Coke in it or whatever, it's but the bins that we've just put on site that are cans and plastic bottles only, and they've got a hole the shape of a plastic bottle, you can't put your pizza box in there. They're working really well. We've been emptying them, and there is only cans and plastic bottles in them, because we've always put them next to general waste, and made the general waste the first one that you get to. So yeah, those lazy people are getting to the general waste first, and we are finding that that's working really, really well. So I think for the cups, we'll probably look at something quite similar to that, just make it a bit easier for them.
Fantastic, thank you. If we go to Lisa next for Go Cotswolds.
Hello, thanks Steve and Gemma for your summaries of all the great things that you're doing in your businesses. For a small business like us, listening to things like that can be a bit intimidating, a bit feels a bit overwhelming sometimes, that everyone else is on this amazing sustainability journey, and they've got heat pumps and solar panels and doing everything they possibly can to be as green and environmental as possible. And I think for a small business like us, that can feel very daunting. And I think for lots of businesses, it can feel very daunting. So I'm pleased that this phrase, the sustainability journey, has come out already in this call, because that's where we are. And we're quite close to the beginning of our sustainability journey. But we're on it because we think it's the right thing to do. We're not doing it to, look good or score points or get PR and social media content out of it. It's because we think it's the right thing to do. The planet's important and we need to look after it. And the Cotswolds are important and we need to look after the Cotswolds as well. I run Go Cotswolds. We're a guided tour company. We've got a fleet of 4 big diesel chugging minibuses, which obviously aren't the most sustainable or environmentally friendly vehicles. They are the most environmentally friendly vehicles that we could possibly have running diesel. We'd love to have electric minibuses. That would be amazing. But they are firstly prohibitively expensive for us at the moment, and the charging infrastructure for the kind of tours that we do just isn't there. If we run out of juice halfway through a tour, then we're not going to be able to find an electric charging station for a minibus. We need to be able to charge very quickly, and to be guaranteed that charging as well. So yeah, electric minibuses are not something that we're thinking about at the moment, but we would love to do that in the future. Our sustainability sort of practices are focusing on how we can help other organisations to improve the Cotswolds, and that sounds like a bit like we're passing the buck. We're not. I'll explain what I mean. We are members of Good Journey. Good Journey is a non-profit organisation that champions car-free travel. In the Cotswolds, car-free travel is seen as being very difficult, and I accept that there are certainly challenges with travelling by public transport in and around and to the Cotswolds. But it is possible, and so we're very big advocates of getting to the Cotswolds, travelling around the Cotswolds without cars. Little things that we do to help that, obviously our minibuses potentially can take up to 16 cars off the road if people join our tours rather than using their own cars. We can drive on some of the smaller, narrower roads that the big old coaches can't, so that's kind of eases congestion and pollution on certain sort of busy through roads and busy major routes. We also have 2 pickup points for our tours, which are strategically placed near to public transport hubs. So we're based in Stratford-upon-Avon, and we pick up from a coach terminal right in the middle of Stratford. It's within walking distance of the train station, and it's within walking distance of all the local accommodation providers and bus stops from out of town as well. And then the other pickup point is Moreton-in-Marsh train station. So people can join our tour very easily if they're staying in Moreton-in-Marsh, or they can take the train up from London or Oxford, and then they can hop on our minibus and we can take them on a beautiful tour of the Cotswolds, visiting places that they may not be able to reach by public transport. And public transport is there, but it's not always the best, as we probably know. On our website, we always put so we have information on our website which helps people to find our pickup points. And one little thing that we took away from Good Journey is that we always put the public transport information first at the top of the page. We list about taxis and getting here by car underneath, but putting public transport front and centre is one of the things that we have learned from our membership of Good Journey. Where else can I talk about? The other thing that we do is we're supporters of the Caring for the Cotswolds scheme, which is sort of managed by the Cotswolds National Landscape, and it's a visitor giving scheme. So when people book a ticket for one of our tours on our website, they have the option to add £1, £2, £3, whatever they feel, an optional donation to the Caring for the Cotswolds scheme. And that money is pooled into a fund which the Cotswolds National Landscape uses to fund community projects and environmental projects, things like tree planting and wildflower meadows sowing, and improving footpaths and access for people to use the footpaths and access to the countryside. So basically, yeah, local organisations can apply to the visitor giving scheme fund, and then money is distributed to those projects to help them get off the ground and to help them run. So we think that's really important, as well as our customers donating to that scheme, which actually quite a lot of them do. We were surprised when we signed up that lots of people do want to put something back. We match fund all of our customers' donations as well, because we don't want the the good thing to just be our customers. It's something that we feel is important too. So we match fund all of our customers' donations. The other thing that we do, we are members of the Cotswold Way Association, and it's a very small thing, but we support the work of the Cotswold Voluntary Wardens, who are doing fantastic work to keep footpaths accessible and clear of rubbish, and fixing stiles and fences and things like that, or replacing stiles with accessible gates and things like that. And we donate to the Royal Right Trust. We visit the Royal Right Stones, and lots of people, there's an honesty box there, lots of people ignore, but we make a donation for every one of our customers to visit that site. It gets a lot of foot traffic, it can get very muddy, and it's it's an ancient site that we think is worthy of preservation. We have just signed up for green tourism. We are literally on the beginning of that journey, but we're hoping to achieve the bronze certification fairly soon. So I wanted to sort of share that insight that we're not perfect, we're not doing everything perfectly, but I don't think you have to go in with the mindset that you don't have to be perfectly sustainable, at least not from the beginning. It is a journey, and there are lots of little things you can do to help, and the reason that we do it is because it's the right thing to do.
Lovely, thank you, Lisa. And you work with Good Journey, and Blenheim Palace, who is another of our champions who couldn't make it today. They also have been working with Good Journey for a number of years and have really seen an uptake in car-free travel to them. And we, with our car-free travel project that we're about to launch, all of that, a lot of that is with Good Journey as well. So their expertise will be coming out to everyone to access. That's good. James and Bridget, would you like to fill us in on Cotswold alpacas?
Yeah, no, can we do that? I've got a small question first, if I may. Gemma and Steve, because we missed the introductions, I didn't get which places you were from. Did you hear that?
Yeah, sorry. I was waiting for Gemma to go first. Okay, I'll go first. I'm the Cotswold Range.
Cotswold Range, okay.
The Cotswold Range, yes.
Brilliant. And Gemma?
I'm at Westonbirt Arboretum.
Brilliant. Okay, I kind of guessed, but I was thinking it sounds like Westonbirt, but I just wasn't sure.
When you've got lots of wood to use, that's a clue.
Yeah. No, that's brilliant. Okay, so we're small,
very small,
and basically we're focused around alpacas. So as I said in our introduction, we do anything alpaca. The main thing we do is walks, but what we also have is workshops that teach craft skills or teach people to care for alpacas, to look after them. We also obviously breed and sell alpacas. People have there's a lot more take up of them on people having them as a pet isn't quite right, but that kind of idea. They've maybe had some sheep in their little bit of a field. They have 1 acre, 2 acre, whatever, and they have a few alpacas instead. And they find they get a much better interaction. Alpacas are really inquisitive. They're a placid animal, so you get a sort of a kind of a good feeling from that for people anyway. We get shearing is something we do, which is just getting the fleece off them, and then the main thing that we do is walks. The main public facing thing that we have is walks, and so that's where most of our people are coming in from. And for our walks, we do both, parties and corporate events, like, and hen do's and birthday parties and things like that. And our walks are actually based around Cowley Manor and the village itself. And so we get to walk through some absolutely fantastic environments, and people get to interact with an animal that is quite big, as far, people are used to dogs or cats or whatever it is maybe, and some people are totally unused. It's one of the big surprises is that people are totally unused to an animal of that size that is looking at them straight in the eye, and so their nervousness and their worries, those all sort of dissipate as they get used to the animal, which is a great thing to see for the sort of the general public that haven't come across animals or haven't been in the countryside so much in such a live environment. So we, in Cowley Manor, we've got, sort of lakes, we've got woods, we've got all sorts of birds, raptors, kingfishers, formal gardens, cascades, all sorts of things that are there, and people benefit massively from that. So on our fleece side,
well, something that I think is important is that we are sustainable. We're off grid. We have batteries and solar power, and we're in the process of building a farmhouse that will have workshop space, and that is built out of hemp. We can have ground source with that. So from the very beginning, everything we've done has been around the environment. We moved to this place in order to live, because our business is our life. This is how we want to live, and this is what we want to communicate to other people and visitors. So part of that is alpacas are about the fleece. We keep them because their fleece is amazing, and using fleece is really important. So I spin, I weave, we do I use natural plant dyes. A lot of that we grow here. Some of it's foraged hedgerow dyeing. And sort of on top of that, it's about educating people, so that all the visitors can learn this thing that people don't understand about where their clothes come from, and what the process is. And when it's done in a very gentle, sustainable way, it's a beautiful thing. Yes, it's more expensive. Slow textiles is a really big, important issue at the moment, with the textile industry being so toxic. People can see the alpacas, they can meet the actual alpaca that their hat comes from. I think it's just really, really exciting. We have lots of plans to expand, to do more workshops.
I mean, on the farm as well, sort of, that's this kind of fleece production side. And I mean, Bridget does all this, but she's, hand weaving, hand spinning. We have machine spinning as well. So, all those processes are happening here, and people get to see those. But on the farm itself, we're working with rewilding. So we've got a small amount of woodland. We're completely chemical free. We don't spray anything on anything. And so we've, binned all those things. And in medicine terms with the animals, we use a very focused method of dealing with animals. They're all individual, and so for antibiotics or for wormers, then they're specifically focused to an animal when it needs it. We have no blanket processes, no anything like that, so that you're not just polluting the ground with chemicals anyway through your animal. That's about it, I think. On off-grid, you've said it all. Yeah, so, we're very off-grid.
So we are a very tiny business, but because it's our life, we can put things into place that you can't do just from a more external position. So that's us for now.
Is that enough for you, or do you want to know more? We can speak for hours.
No, that's a brilliant.
Could I just say one more thing that was in my head was kind of circles or cycles, in a sense of trying to, whatever you've got. I mean, we've got alpacas, that's it. But trying to make the cycle out of that. And a simple cycle that we see here very much is you have an alpaca, you get some fleece from it, you pick its poo up and you put it on the garden and you get your vegetables from it. Alpaca poo is like dynamite. It's called black gold, and it is phenomenal. I'm not just selling it, because we don't sell it. We don't let it off the farm. We give it to the villagers. But
it goes to the allotments.
But because it has a low nitrogen content, so you're getting into all the sort of chemistry. If you take other fertilizers, or you take cow manure or horse manure, high nitrogen content in them. You have to rot them down first before you can use them. Alpaca poo, low nitrogen content. You can put it straight on your plants. Just use it straight off, and things grow like rockets out of it.
James, enough.
Okay, sorry, I was excited. But anyway, the point I was making, I do apologise, was this thinking in cycles was a big thing for us. We were thinking, well, we've got X, you know, I hear some of you talking about your cardboard recycling, or your, you know, how do you then turn that into a cycle as opposed to it being a lump of something or a stuck thing?
Yeah, no,
Sorry,
that's a
I'll
really
shut
good.
up now.
No, I think that's a really good analogy. I think that's a good. You could apply that to every aspect of your work, really, can't you? And the alpaca poo, I will tell my husband, because he's very much into his veggie.
Yeah.
oils, so
Come and
he
get
will,
some.
Yeah, come and get some.
and Nick, last but not least, and you have alpacas as well. So
We do, yes. Probably not as many as James, but we've got 3. It's a Fairy Tale Farm's a bit like the Ark. Everything comes 2 by 2. But yeah, I'll just say a few initial words about Fairy Tale Farm and why we exist, which then flows into the sustainability story, which is we are I would say at a developing stage of sustainability. We're on our journey. Fairy Tale Farm, we opened in 2013. The whole concept behind it was really inspired by my eldest daughter, who's got cerebral palsy. So when you have 4 kids, 1 is disabled, 3 aren't, you realize that a lot of attractions, you're sort of choosing, do you go somewhere for your non-disabled children or somewhere for your disabled child? And then the others sometimes are sitting on the sidelines. So we wanted to create somewhere that was just like a mainstream visitor attraction, but where children with special needs are actually first in our mind with everything we do. That's our starting point. And then it also came from my planning side. As a planning consultant, I work for a lot of visitor attractions around the UK. Probably UK market leader, I would think, for tourism and leisure. We work for a lot of theme parks and attractions from the south coast, like Poulton's Park, Peppa Pig World, right up to the north, I don't know, Blackpool Pleasure Beach. For decades we've done that, and lots of holiday park operators, all the haven sites, park holidays we do. So all that, I had a lot of contacts in the industry, so we were able to not only start an attraction that was designed around the children with special needs, but we were also able to upcycle and sort of take things from my contacts around the UK and repurpose them at Fairy Tale Farm, which has been sort of one of our primary almost attractions. So, for example, if you walk along our Enchanted Walk, there's various things where you can press buttons and things happen. We try to make it sensory. And a lot of those structures come from Blackpool Illuminations, completely repurposed, stripped down, repainted and repurposed. The Snow White Garden, for example. I don't know how many of you have been to Fairy Tale Farm, but the Snow White Garden, we've got a beanstalk we've got in what area called Jack's Yard. That came from a attraction manufacturer in Yorkshire that closed down. So we took their items and repurposed them to create the Snow White Garden. And then we've got an in-house sculptor who creates a lot of these things, and he takes old things and reworks them. So he created our, I think, 9-meter high beanstalk. And for example, our dinosaur area, those dinosaurs, they came from the river caves at Blackpool Pleasure Beach, funnily enough, completely reimagined, repainted. They now move, some come up out of water, but all made using things from other attractions. But a lot of items we get are not just we take them and we use them again. We actually repurpose them a little bit, and we update them and we reimagine them and we make them accessible, things like that. So, and sometimes complete repurposing, like we'll take something and then we'll rework it into a planter or into a bench. So we do try and do that with everything we do. We have had some projects, some specific sustainability projects, like our Eco Bricks project we did a few years ago. And that was done in collaboration with local schools. We went out to schools, we explained to them about plastic bottles and crisp packaging and things like that. And rather than just put them in a recycling bin, let's see if we can actually reuse them before we put them in the recycling bin. So we got all the local schools stuffing their 2-litre bottles, their Coke bottles and things like that, with single-use food packaging such as crisp packets, straws, etc. We also did that in partnership with a local co-op in Shipping Norton. They provided a sort of quality control process where the schools would send it to co-op, they'd check it, they'd then deliver it to us, and then we built various structures out of eco bricks, out of these plastic bottles. So we've got a big animal house that we use for our turkeys, which is built out of eco bricks. We built benches around the farm. And we also put signage up so we can actually tell the story of EcoBricks, how the whole project works. So for Fairy Tale Farm, and I think for attractions, a lot of the benefits of doing sustainability activities is, yes, it's good for the environment, and yes, in a lot of cases it does save money, but it's also can be part of the story that you tell. So for us, it's integral to our story. So for example, we've got our wilderness walk area where we've created various sort of natural wildlife habitats. So there are areas at Fairy Tale Farm that are very electronic, where you press buttons and things happen, things move, lighting and sensory type things. But we wanted an area that was completely non-electronic, so sensory in other ways. So we could teach children about the sort of creation of habitats and biodiversity. So we've got a vegetable patch where they can dig up vegetables and replant them, a touch box where we've got natural things in there like alpaca fleeces, for example, bug hotel, a willow tunnel, a seed and nectar bar, with a wildflower meadow, trying to attract the bees and the butterflies. So I think with Fairy Tale Farm, a lot of our attractions have been very sustainable based. Where we're looking now to improve things really is on our general processes. So, for example, this afternoon I'm speaking to an EV charging company. We have no electric vehicle charging points at all at Fairy Tale Farm. We need to try and resolve that. We are using local suppliers. We're using recycled packaging and cups, plastic-free, compostable, recyclable coffee takeaway cups and lids. We're using eco cleaning products. We changed all our products to eco-friendly ones, which are not that more expensive. They're a little bit more expensive, but not much more than the less sustainable products. We've redesigned our toilets to use less water. We've changed we do illuminations in November and December, which doesn't sound very sustainable, but we rebuilt that completely about 3 or 4 years ago with LED lighting, which takes very, very small amounts of electricity. That also saved our electricity bill significantly. And we generally are looking for as many people-powered attractions as we can that don't use electricity. So there's things that people can turn, and that creates electric, and that creates music and things like that. So we are still on our journey, and we're always looking for quirky ideas. So I suppose for us, it's going to be a mix over the next few years of more and more quirky and educational experiences. We do our learning hub again, where we teach very much about outdoor nature, sustainability, teaching children about sustainable activities. But then I think where we need to really move forward at Fairy Tale Farm is on our actual enhance some of the measures we've done in our business processes, is trying to go a little bit further. I mean, solar power would be great for us, especially as we could have battery storage, because we had a major power cut on Saturday 2 weeks ago when we were just launching our new DreamWorks partnership for Gabby's Dollhouse. Half of Oxfordshire seemed to come to Fairy Tale Farm that morning because we had unseasonably warm weather. And we had over 1,000 people on site. We didn't know what to do with them because that part of Chipping Norton had no power all day. We had no tills, no cafe, nothing. And it was very stressful. And if we'd have had solar power with battery storage, we could have kept going. So that's going to kick us forward in things like that, to make us less vulnerable. I think sustainability can make businesses less vulnerable to what's happening, not just locally, but in the wider world, obviously. And that's probably my summary.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Nick. And yeah, I hadn't even thought about protecting yourself from sort of power cuts and things. And I know you said you were meeting with someone about EV charging, and those that are looking at EV charging, but you don't have enough grid supply or anything, because I know that can sometimes be an issue, is that Farm Ed have a solar powered EV charging point. So if that's a barrier for you, then it looks like there are some solutions out there. And if anyone's interested, then I can get the details from Farm Ed for you, or I can put you in contact. And the only other thing that you made me think about was actually something that came out of the accommodation forum we had on Wednesday, that one of the businesses was talking about a book by a lady called Nancy Birtwistle, and she's got a huge social media following, called Clean and Green, and it's full of useful things where you can make your own cleaning products, etc. So it's much cleaner and it's much lower cost as well. So I'll share the links to her details as well, because that might be of interest to people in this group too. So thank you to all the champions for speaking. there are other businesses here. If you've got any questions, or champions, if you've got questions for other champions, or if anyone wants to jump in and tell us about what you're doing and things.
I've just got one more thing that might be useful to add. So we switched to being groups instead of general people, but also we added in all our automated messages in booking, please can you car share? And it did actually work that more people car shared. So in all those automated messages, when you're encouraging people, just say like, you know, if you can come with your friends, please come together rather than come individually. And one big problem we had was with a composting toilet, that people just tried to use it as, we tried to have no bins and encourage people to take their waste home, and all they did was put all their rubbish in the composting bin instead, which didn't really help things. So no bins isn't an answer. So we do now have we put out a very small bin as an indicator, and please could you take your waste home, rather than like put it in the loo.
Yeah, just on the bin front, I think Wiltshire Council now are changing their general to have no food waste, and the general waste bin on our site is only really used by the general public, so I'm not sure how we're going to get around the fact that we're going to have to police what people put in it. So I'm not sure how we're going to get solutions for that one.
Yeah, I think I'm right in saying, and I should know, but I think that the legislation changes from the 1st of April.
Yeah.
Businesses do have to recycle, make sure that they have some means of recycling food waste.
Yeah.
Maybe it will be enough that if you've got provision for recycling of food waste, if your general waste is contaminated, maybe that's acceptable.
Yeah, it's just because we're an off-site venue as such. It's very much wildlife, and we would have to have another bin, I suppose. But yeah, another challenge which is forced upon us without much solution, really.
Yeah.
If it helps, we've just put in a food waste bin next to the restaurant. Yeah, top of my sort of how we're going to do this was, a wasp's going to go in it, the fox is going to go in it, the crow's going to go in it. How do we empty it in the middle of a forest and all that? So if you want to pick my brains about that at some point, we've come up with something.
We don't provide food, and so the only food that is on site would be if just anybody brings some. So I feel like we have to provide some kind of bin. The other alternative is just to remove our general waste bin and let them take it home with them. But then the risk is they use our recycling bin.
This is the stage where Lindsay gives me a dagger look, because I always ask far too many questions. But I have to say, I've got a whole host of questions, and if nobody's putting their hand up, well, not that you have to put your hand up, but shouting out, can I ask a few of them? Am I allowed, Lindsay?
You are, yeah, that's fine.
Well, the first one actually isn't a question, but I mean, one of the things I absolutely love about these talks that we've had is that these things come up, and my only claim to fame on this is my cup is actually made of recycled chewing gum, which I just think is a fantastic idea, and all these recycling things are fantastic. And in the accommodation one of the self-catering properties was talking about their duvet being made with recycled plastic bits in it, and she said it's fantastic and really comfy, and her business is sort of at the luxury end, very much at the luxury end of the market. So I'm sure she's right. And I have to say, my partner's allergic to feathers, and so I will have to look into that one, because you
need to look into alpaca duvets. Sorry,
I don't know where my other half is on allergy to alpacas, but
alpaca is not allergic, actually. It's hypoallergenic.
Oh God!
Yeah, I know. Terrible. Sorry, that's why I waded in. I thought, hello, here we go.
And does anybody make alpaca duvets?
Yes, they do. Yeah,
brilliant.
Yeah, no, they are around.
And just a couple of other observations. I mean, Lisa, when you're apologizing for, slightly feeling guilty because your business is on 4, diesel chugging minibuses going around the thing. I think that's not the point. I mean, the point is, and come out clearly in all of these meetings that it is those tiny little steps all add up, and anything we can do is actually really vitally important in the overall effect. And I think, you know, time and again in these, and I think, Lindsay, you'll probably nod in agreement, but you may not, but that's what struck me. And I do have a question that's related to that. You said at the beginning, Gemma Jacks, when you were talking about the thing, that you're a green champion for your own business. Is that right?
Yeah, we've got a whole green team, which really helps because it means that someone from each of the individual different areas of the business come together to meet every now and again. It means that it's not just, you know, me and one other person trying to push everybody to do it. It means that everyone, their representative, can go back to their team and say, turn that light off, or let's get some more ideas from lots of different people. It brings in the whole of Westonbirt comes together to think of some ideas, because, you know, we haven't got all the ideas, but someone who might not have come forward to sort of contribute something might actually come up with the best idea to do reusable cups or whatever. So it means that everyone gets a chance to have a chat about it.
Yeah, and I think it's absolutely crucial that businesses try and involve staff as much as possible in it. What was really fantastically to me was a bit mind shattering in our surveys that we did, our accessibility surveys. Everybody was very keen on lots of elements, but they weren't keen on us sort of talking about ways to get staff involved. I guess it felt like we were trying to tread on people's toes, but I do think, you know, very much that is something that we need to ensure and encourage that businesses do, getting staff buy-in and staff involvement, because like you said, it is a bit like having teenage kids and switching lights off and all those kind of things, but also in coming up with the ideas and having those conversations about, you know, plastic filled or alpaca filled duvets or bubblegum, whatever, or, you know, the recycling elements that have come in. And I guess one of the other things that it has been a common theme throughout all of these is the very much the interconnection of all this with all things local. And I think that's, I don't know who around the room here or the virtual room has been to one of our local connections events. I think, has anybody been to a local connections event? Not sure. But we've done basically speed dating for businesses and accommodation providers, trying to get small local businesses to meet up with people who are doing, well, all sorts of weird and wonderful things, or offering services or very small attractions or whatever it might be. And that whole local connections thing, I think, is vitally important, and supporting one another and using local, etc. Totally. But I have a guess, this is a very long-winded way of getting to a question, is one thing that always strikes me every time we have this is that most people in this virtual room and most people at the meetings that we've come to are wanting to be green because they're sort of, you know, they think it's the right thing to do, and they're not just doing it from a business point of view. But one thing that's troubling or puzzling us, or we're trying to find a solution for, is how do we engage those who really aren't doing very much, and who are a bit intimidated by thinking, I don't do anything, so, you know, ooh, I don't want to come along to these kind of meetings, because that's where I think that we as an organization behind the scenes and doing things will really make a difference, is getting, you know, it's incremental increases for businesses like yourself who are already doing fantastically good things that I think, oh, this is amazing. Haven't we got fantastic businesses in the thing? But then there are lots of businesses who are doing next to nothing, but who could take some of those simple steps that don't necessarily involve money, but we haven't found a good way of engaging them. And I don't know if anybody in the room has any ideas, because I will listen to anything. Yeah, please.
Can I jump on that one a little bit?
Yeah.
We talked about journey, or journey was mentioned, and I think it's really important to kind of remember the journey, and maybe those stories need telling. You know, it's fantastic listening to Gemma and you think, wow, you know, look at all the things they're up to, you know, everything that's going on. You know, it's a big operation. There's lots of people, and you're stood on the outside of that, say, looking in. I could well imagine you think, oh my God, we can't get anywhere near that. That's like, oh no, we better not start, sort of thing. But I think there will have been a point, at Westonbirt, and I think Westonbirt is maybe a little tricky because it is trees, it is green, it is nature, it is all sorts of things already. It's not a steel plant kind of thing, so, but there is a point where you start. And I think those journeys, those beginning places are important, because people have to see, that it's the incremental changes that get you to, listening to Gemma talking today, not that suddenly of a Tuesday morning they did all this, instantaneously. And so I think that story of journey is really important. And I think also the other element is kind of demythologizing certain things. I mean, certainly something we've seen very much, and we're small, but we've built a house here, and it's a totally green house, but it's actually a very high-tech house, which is it's kind of low-tech, high-tech, which I think people have a feeling, or something I've certainly seen, is they have a feeling that if you have solar panels, that's kind of a step back from being on the grid. On the grid is safe, on the grid that's what we do. We've worked hard to get our grid system in, and being on the grid is the thing to do. And off grid is for the kind of hippies almost, and they're big generalizations and they're kind of not true, but they indicate something that is maybe the jamming thing for people that are trying to come into this, and they think, oh, maybe I should, but I have all these things in my head. And I think it is interesting, because a lot of you have said, oh, turning the lights off and things like that. And for us, a really interesting thing was being off grid. We have power systems here that we're in charge of, and actually off grid isn't quite right. We just have our own grid. It's literally that. We have our own grid. Our solar panels bring in, the electricity, and, that then gets used by whatever you put on, and you've got your own grid. And we have things on our phones. You just dial it up and it tells you exactly what's happening. And I think as soon as you start to see those things, and you see that tech, because it is high tech, that's like, you're massively, linked up to an internet, you're linked up to all these systems that are measuring things in astronomical ways in their little computer chips inside their box of tricks. And you can see what's happening live, and you get to understand, if I don't switch that light off, then the power's going to go off. You really get to see those instant implications. So I think it's kind of demystifying some of those things and getting past those things, and seeing that these things that in a bigger scale are maybe simpler to do than you think. I'll shut up now, sorry.
No, that's great. I mean, I don't know, Nick, you may totally disagree with this, but I always think it's slightly analogous to the disability and inclusion scenario, where, lots of businesses say to us, oh, we're in a listed building, we can't be accessible. And we keep trying to explain that actually, like, wheelchair use is, 7% of people who've got a disability, and that actually, we're as much talking about, mum with a pram, or mum or dad taking the kid in a pram, and they've some kind of access there. They probably can pull it up a few steps. We've all been there, and pulled the kid, bump their brains out whilst pulling them into the shop or whatever up the steps. But it's that kind of thing. Or somebody like my mum who can walk but struggles to go up a full flight of steps, but she can walk about and go a fair distance. But it's that same kind of idea. I think in somehow we have to engage the businesses who are doing nothing, because I think the assumption on both accessibility and on sustainability is that it's just going to cost, and they can't see the point of it. They think everything's going to be the things that are very expensive. So yeah, we're struggling to get engagement, I think, from businesses that are doing very little. So any ideas, very happily accepted.
Yeah, Chris, I had
Yep.
one more actually.
Yeah, sure.
I've dropped this in before. I don't know if I've mentioned it directly to you guys, but accreditation and recognition plays a big part for companies. Like, our journey pretty much started off green tourism. It was something I wanted, but to achieve that award, I had to jump through a million sustainability hoops, which I was more than happy to do. And then at the end of it, I got accreditation. Now, I wouldn't say has that massively Has that accreditation increased our custom? Probably not. But it's one of those things that does look good on our website and social media and things like that.
Yeah.
So I've always pushed before for some kind of, well, you've dished out the sustainability champions, okay, and in that sense you have recognised certain businesses, but can everybody achieve that? Probably not. So it's whether or not you could go down the green tourism, green award and things like that, and create your own award where there's quite simple steps, you know, like a bottom tier award for just having a recycling plan for your business and things like that. So achievable steps for businesses to then achieve a really high rating.
Yeah, that two things that I can see Lindsay dying to get in, because we have been looking
I think
at
we
that.
might have spoke to about it before. That's why I
Yeah,
thinking
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
as
something
well.
we've been thinking about for a while, and the New Forest do a really good scheme themselves. There's some new EU regulations that are coming in, and we're just sitting back and watching to see if that would impact whether we could seriously run our own accreditation scheme because of the sort of new rules that brings in. But yeah, potentially we have been looking at, could we provide something that doesn't have a cost, that just enables people to get different levels, and showcase that, you know, even if someone is just doing some small steps, but they are doing something, and then pull that through to all our channels.
and we are looking at a couple of logos for our website as well, just to say. And again, Lindsay, do you want to just fill in on that? There's
yeah, so there will be a car-free Cotswolds logo for businesses that are putting car-free travel as a priority for their people coming to their sites. We are getting a logo designed for the sustainability champions, so you will have a badge on the website as well. And in preparation, in case we do go ahead with the accreditation, I've got logos being developed for our green leaf scheme, which would be exactly what you're saying, Steve, that tiered system that will help showcase businesses on their journey. So yeah,
In terms of cost, though, because I guess once you've got the award framework and then it's just a virtual award, what costs do you anticipate being the hurdle for the project? Is it staffing or is it?
If we did it, it would be purely the administration side of things, and the fact that
Right.
we would have to rely on honesty. So we would have to provide a checklist and rely on the business to be honest with us. I mean, I think knowing that visitors would soon start putting sort of comments online if someone was saying, oh yeah, we're highly sustainable, we do this and we do that, and then they visit and they don't get that experience. So yeah, there's just a couple of things along those lines.
Obviously, quite a bit of our funding comes through, most of it comes through, well, certainly of our wages comes through local authorities. And we do have to avoid greenwashing charges. I think that's always the issue with some of these, you know, self-assessment things. And just say as an aside, I know there are some other people who have hands have been flicking up and down, so I try and keep this brief. I did work on one of my first jobs was a green tourism pilot, and again, what struck me was that all the businesses who got involved were already doing stuff, and green tourism, it's just like you say, it doesn't, you know, whenever I ask people if they get business through green tourism, the answer is almost resoundingly no. So it's not done for that, it is done for the PR element or because they feel it's the right thing to do.
Actually, for me, the resources available to achieve the award was the most important thing, because there's things I just hadn't considered which they required from me. So it was more like the checklist bulletins on what I needed to do to try and achieve it. That was there's more of a resource than the end product.
Interesting.
Sorry,
that's the same thing. I've looked at doing B Corp a few times, and it's just so administratively heavy that I just can't justify the admin time at the moment to do it.
I'm the same with that with B Corp.
Yeah,
I don't see the I don't know why, but I don't see the incentive myself, knowing what I do already, whether I need that additional work involved to achieve it.
And just in terms of like encouraging businesses, then I think do focus on the cost savings and the like, because that's what rather than the cost to put technology or something in. So there's a lot of talk about the cost of EV chargers and solar, but there are so many things you've been talking about, like the sachets. When I calculated my sachets versus the big ketchup, you know, it's a lot cheaper. It just, it's not necessarily a cost, it's just a different way of thinking about it. And we did calculate boiling water on site to do the washing up, because the same thing, we're off grid, and we got rid of the gas and worked out that actually it's better to take it home and put it through the dishwasher, because the cost and time were both better to actually pack it up and take it home dirty than they were to wash it on site. So it's kind of like, there are things that I'm sure all businesses can do that will save costs without actually that much work.
That's exactly what I was going to say as well, Kate.
Unfortunately, it does seem that most products which are green do just cost more. That is the unfortunate reality on a lot of things. But I think, Lindsay, you mentioned about creating your own cleaning products and things like that. Because I'm always paying a premium for.
Well, it was fascinating. The woman who told us about that said she makes a cleaner out of chestnuts, and she has some chestnut trees on there.
Yeah, horse
But
chestnuts. She does that only that at home.
She hasn't dared use it on for customers yet. She only uses it on her kids at home, or whatever. But she says it works really well. They are, well, apparently, yeah. Apparently, they're still alive, or most of them. Yeah.
The frustrating thing about buying eco stuff is it frequently comes wrapped in cling film, and you're like, what was the point in that? But yeah.
Something I found daunting from this point of view is something that Lisa touched on, that she's doing all these things right, but unless she's doing everything right, it feels like sustainability is this binary thing that you're either there or you're not there. And I've just been putting in a composting system. So let's bring it back to animal poo. So the goat compost rots down at a different rate to the chicken compost. And I'm planning ultimately to be completely sustainable in my compost. But right now I've got some bags of compost that I've bought in horrible plastic bags, because I have to returf the garden so it looks nice for the photography, so I can actually service my clients. And then in a few years' time, my composting system will be up and running, and I won't be buying bags of compost in nasty plastic bags. But at the moment, I feel like I'm on the one hand spending all this money on my new composters that have just been built. I'm putting in backbreaking effort doing it all. But at the same time, I can't really call myself sustainable.
You can, though. You can.
And that's the bit that I feel like I don't want to be misleading what I'm doing. And I feel like at the moment, I'm kind of getting the worst of both. I found this really helpful, first of all, because everyone's talking about it being a journey. Like, I feel like I'm in year 1, and I'll be there in maybe year 5. And it is something that matters to me. But in the short term, I want to do seed harvesting. I want to do all these different things, but I can't do it yet.
I was going to say we could solve it at a glance, in one swoop. All you need is that alpaca explosive. That would solve all your composting needs.
Well, the goats do it. I've got goat compost, and but it's not quite put on the ground level.
No. But that's critical, that thing about a journey, because we are where we are, kind of thing. We are puking X into the atmosphere. We are doing X. That's just what it is, in terms of where we are in terms of sustainability, as a country, as a planet, as a whatever, or as a tiny little business, or one person. You are where you are, and it's about moving in a direction. So the wish to be sustainable is about moving, not being about sustainable now, today.
Totally. And that was the reason on our choice of champions that we've gone from big to little, from people who are well down the journey and are leading the way to those who are at the start of it. And that's why we use that carefully, that language around journey, because again, one of the things that has struck us Lindsay, really, I'm saying us in a sort of royal we way, but when she was doing the research for all this and looking at what people do and who might be possible champions and trying to get that cross section and again, this is something that has come out really strongly for us, is there are loads of business doing loads of fantastic things, but actually quite often they say nothing about what they're doing on their website. or in their social media channels, and they are really missing a trick there. So again, one of the things that we're looking to do is to do some sort of slightly oven ready the media pack from Good Journey that would be people would be able to use, and suggestions as sort of a toolkit, because I think going back to that thing about, you know, you worrying you're not eco, the point is that any step that you're taking is a step in the right direction, and that's what we are trying to encourage. So yeah, very definitely, you know, it doesn't matter how big or small the step is, or even if it's not obviously a step. I mean, I always talk the case of this B&B who I talked to in Broadway, and they were saying, oh, we don't do anything sustainable. And then they were saying, I was saying, oh, do you have walking from it? And they, you know, from your property. So, oh yeah, fantastic walks. And when you looked at their social media channel, they were doing, they had a dog, the owner had a dog and was going out each day and doing these walks, but she wasn't connecting that to the B&B. So she wasn't saying, you know, I've gone out from a walk, this is from the doorstep, you know, haven't had to get in the car and go anywhere, but these amazing photos. Or she also made jam that she served for their breakfast. She did a picture of her making jam, but she didn't join the dots and say, you know, and this is what I serve for breakfast for guests, kind of, you know, it wasn't there or implied or anything. So she was doing all these things, but she wasn't telling the story. And I think it's that telling the story of even small steps, I think, is interesting and adds to the experience for everybody. That was the whole point behind our local connections work, is that actually, from the accommodations point of view, that offer of small, interesting businesses that people wouldn't otherwise have come across, it doesn't get told and they don't get that opportunity, but it actually adds something to the accommodations offer as well as to the visitors experience. So it's sort of win-win for everybody. So yeah, I totally agree with you. A journey, and we must all try and use that same
I'll challenge
language around it.
I'll challenge any company to say that they're 100% sustainable.
Totally.
You're trying to reduce your impacts, not remove everything. There's things I can't do. It's out of my hands. I can't control my supply chain. I can buy locally, but I can't control where they're getting it from. There's just there's limitations.
And also, obviously, the type of business, like somebody said, I mean, Lisa, sorry to pick on you, but, you know, obvious example in the fact that yours is a trickier business, but all those things about, you know, you using local places to stop, to encourage people to have meals in, picking up from railway stations, those are all exactly the kind of behaviours that we as an organisation want to encourage and which we think are really important. And it all connects in with the, you know, at the end of the day, it also connects in with the quality of the visitor experience, because again, I think, and I haven't got the data and I can't back it up, but anecdotally, we have certainly found that the green bits visitors really like, even if it's not the motivating factor, and they are really important in return visitors and in people coming back again, because it adds to them feeling that they've, you know, it was a good experience and it was something memorable, etc. And I think some of those things are, you know, even if it just captures the mind and they go, wow, that's fantastic, you know, haven't seen that before, whatever it might be, brilliant. Sorry, I'm prattling on. Anybody else who want to ask a question? Or
I was just going to come back, just what have you just been saying, and what James said earlier about a circle of things. It's really difficult when you've already got something. So, you know, we already had like this big infrastructure and had to turn it around. But if you start something new, like people have been saying, when you start a new project, if you start that with sustainability at the top of it and say, I'm not going to start something new that is not going to be sustainable, and then you get that circular thing going. So I think it's much harder to change something that's already in place than to start something new. So I think as long as everything that you start new now has that at the top of your mind, you're going in the right direction. And for what it's worth, we have lots of diesel vehicles too still.
that just to reinforce that came out very clearly, especially in the accommodation meeting, because obviously they were saying with old building, you know, retrofit is trickier and is more expensive, and often if they're listed buildings there are real problems around it. But on their extensions, new bits, whatever it might be, they could go the whole hog and have, you know, proper insulation and double glazing and all the things that they were struggling to get in the old listed bit of the building. So yeah, I think I totally agree with you. It's much easier with starts of anything, whether it's building or the actually starting the business. Just one other thing that came up was there was a talk about bus routes, and I know, you know, the Robin bus, fantastic initiative, but one thing as the LVEP I think has been really worthwhile and which we're pressing hard is, I think with buses in particular, trains to a certain extent as well, in the past, visitors and us as tourism organisations have found it really hard to get our voice heard in saying that, you know, we don't think buses necessarily go by the right routes because they've always been centred around residents' needs and uses, but actually visitors play a really important part in helping to sustain and make transport viable, especially in rural areas. And I think it's really important the clubbing together. I mean, we're hoping to do a sort of a mapping exercise looking at transport, where buses go and how frequently they are, because our experience very much is that they haven't been taken into consideration. And now one of the big advantages of being an LVEP is that we do have a bit of a seat at the table and people are beginning to listen to us. I won't say we've managed to transform anything, but even like the Robin, which is a fantastic example, we were making the point that overseas visitors in particular are very keen to use public transport because they're worried about driving on the wrong side of the road and unfamiliar roads and much narrower than they're used to in most cases. So they are much keener users of public transport, but we don't make it easy for them. We really don't, and so that is part and parcel of what we're looking at.
I've just had a slight side thought on that, sorry, on the transport piece. So a million years ago, I chaired a project in Manchester. It was a Knowledge Capital project. And there were some studies in Manchester then that proved that the free bus service that went from station to station had done a massive uplift. I don't know if there's like other studies that you could look at that would just prove that kind of uplift in visitors coming just because of public transport that was put in for the general public and who live there. I mean that was like 15 years ago, but there might be some studies in cities that have looked at that transport that might be translatable into the Cotswolds.
Well, one of the big issues we have is obviously from the transport companies and for the funding of public transport in rural areas, they never want to go beyond committing for a year. But a year makes it really hard for us who are trying to promote transport links. A year is not long enough. I mean, for overseas visitors, we're working on, 18-month to 2-year advance. We need to know. So the Robin bus is again a classic example. We'd love to tell the Japanese market about it, and the Americans and people, and we think it would be a nice experience for them to go on a little bus and meet some locals. They love that kind of thing, and have a far healthier view of buses in particular than UK residents do, I think, generally. But the timescales aren't right. We need to know that bus is going to be running in a year's time, or 2 years' time, ideally. So that's another of the conversations we're having, trying to persuade them to look at a longer time scale. But it is slightly a jump in the dark for them when we think we could get people to use buses that at the moment don't exist. But that's not necessarily easy one.
I'm probably going to have to wrap up, I think,
Yep.
because we are. I'm sure we could keep talking. We have another forum next week on nature-related activities. So if that's something you're interested in, you're more than welcome to come to that as well. And I'll circulate a link to that session in a follow-up email. We've also got next week a how to attract visitors by foot and bike workshop, which is a half-day in-person free workshop. So I'll also pop the details in an email. And CNL have just produced some great guides on energy and waste and nature related activities. So again, I'll try and give you links for those, and a few other bits including the lady that has the book about making all your own cleaning products, etc. And sort of the form, in case you haven't already told us what sustainability activities you do for your web listing on our website. But yeah, if you've got any questions or follow up, then do let me know. I have got a bit of a backlog, I will admit, but I'll come back to you as quickly as I can.
Thank you ever so much for
Thank
coming
you,
along.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
See ya.
Everyone gone? Yep.
Yes.